And good evening, folks. Welcome to Sunday evening, the 75th episode of the Ghost of Bacon. I'm your host, Jake Roberts. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you guys. I see a lot of people already, commenting here in the live stream. I see Carolyn, Linda, Tom, Jan, Kat, Amy, Linda, and Adam Thomas in the house. He's going to get a huge shout out here at the end. Tom Burns earlier. Saw you. Jason, glad to see you. Frank March in the house. Stan, of course. Tommy, you guys were the early birds here before I really started rolling. Thanks for coming, guys. So tonight, I have, more of a housekeeping issue I wanted to talk about. In my latest book, The Keys of the Holy Cross, Keys of the Rosi Crosse, I included a section called the Bacon's Codebook, and I want to kind of illuminate that a little bit and explain it. We have some more people popping. Ayo, glad to see you, my friend. And there he is, always reminding me. Yes, everyone, if you enjoy the show, you enjoy this podcast, you enjoy the information that you see, please hit that like button. The more followers I have, the more opportunities I have in YouTube itself on my channel. You're always good at reminding me of that, AO. Thank you. Appreciate it. So originally I planned on streaming directly to Facebook as well. However, they are still limiting your ability to stream directly to Facebook on certain types of pages and groups and so on. And the podcasting forum I use is called StreamYard, and they're currently trying to get them to change those rules. So if I'm a little bit off tonight, I apologize. I was in a kickball tournament yesterday. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Now, it's a game we play as kids, right? And so we're playing, and and we have 10 people on our team, and people are running around and making amazing plays, and I'm running around and thinking that I'm 5 years old again and 8 or whatever. And like I said, today I feel like I have been hit by a truck. So cautionary tale out there, everyone. Kickball is a rough sport. So just thought I would overshare a little bit there for you, gang. Oh, golly, Jan. Is it ever? It is exhausting, Amy. Welcome back, Penn. So tonight, what I wanted to share with you, like I said, here, hold on. That kind of hurt. So what I want to do is, I'm going to show you the page. On pages 348 through 350, 349, I have what I call an extended Bacon's Codebook. And what I did was, when I discovered all of the information I discovered in the ciphertext, I expanded some of the cipher values that were meaningful. And in so doing, a lot of people started to kind of question the validity of, well, if these numbers are if there's more numbers, then you have more possibilities of so-called hits or whatever. And what people need to understand is I do things in a slightly different way. I expanded, and this is on that page, what we would normally consider to be cipher signatures. And then what I did was I made an entire list of possible values all the way up to 502. It spans 2 pages, as you can see here. So this creates a little problem here. Let's see if I can do this right. There we go. There's the other page. I'm going to explain that in tonight's presentation. I'm going to explain how this could present a problem and why, in the way that I've used cipher systems, it actually doesn't cause that problem at all. So, I'm going to go ahead and throw out my dog and pony show here. And this presentation obviously is called Bacon's Codebook. And this is where I'm really stressing that context is everything. And some of you who have been doing, some of this work, Jason, you're here, Adam's here. And once you get involved in it and you start seeing how these systems interact, suddenly things start to make more sense. And so what I'm going to do is kind of forward here. I'm going to start out with a little story about Queen Elizabeth I's spy master. His name was Sir Francis Walsingham. Now, Sir Francis Walsingham was at the very center of her spy network. He was huge on fooling the enemy, subterfuge. He was keeping very close tabs on Mary, Queen of Scots, and she despised him. He was at the very center of the web of intelligencers spread throughout Europe. And he had a code book. And in this code book, and I believe it's at the British Library, if I remember correctly, but there are multiple documents associated with it. And I think there were up to 500 entries, 500 numbers that each correlated to a meaning, a specific meaning. Now, this is a little different than what Bacon cipher systems do. However, I believe that what I've been doing is kind of recreating and uncovering what could be called Bacon's codebook. Now, Francis Walsingham's codebook, like I said, these are 500 sequential numbers, and each of them had their own individual meanings. And so these are consecutive numbers, most of them. So because it was a code book, this meant that this was a direct substitution. Whenever these numbers appeared, all his agents had to do was look at their code book and identify, what its meaning was. So there was no problem with what we call saturation when we're looking at the cipher systems of Sir Francis Bacon. And I've talked about saturation before on this podcast. And tonight I want to give a little bit of a few cautions about how to use that section of my book that I included. It's not there as a code book per se in the sense that there is a direct substitution of each of these numbers. That's not what I'm implying at all. I was trying to illustrate a couple of things, and I'm going to get into that here. So what is saturation exactly? Well, we have a collection of Bacon cipher signatures, and if you go out on the internet, this table that you see here is normally what pops up, or something very similar to it. It always contains the name Francis and Bacon, and then Francis Bacon together, Shakespeare, and then William Shakespeare, and all of the values, Fra Rosi Crosse, frater, as Latin for brother. And here across the top of these columns, you see the name, but then you have simple, reverse, and K cipher values of each of these names. So all these cipher systems do is they assign a value to each letter of the alphabet in different ways. Simple does it one way, reverse does it the opposite way. K cipher is a little different. And so what that does is it changes the value, the number value, when you add up the values of the letters in the name, it changes the end result. We call these signatures. Now, the way the system was traditionally used in this kind of research, people would, identify one of these numbers. For example, they would see on page 33 of the first folio of Shakespeare, there's a reference to Bacon or something of that nature. And they'd say, that means that Bacon wrote Shakespeare. Now, it is an indication, yes, it's a signpost of look closer here, but it's not definitive in and of itself. It just isn't. Another thing, I believe it was page 57 was actually labeled 58 in one of the plays. And so 57, of course, is the value of the triple tau, TTT, 19, 19, 19, added up, 57. 58 is the Elizabethan short cipher value of the name Shakespeare. And so we were substituting the name Shakespeare for the triple tau, which represents Francis Bacon. And I've explained why that number represents him in a variety of ways in previous podcasts. Now, on average, when you see one of these tables, if we count simple, reverse, and case cipher for each of these values, here you see there are, I think, 21 values. Sometimes you see tables with only 18, sometimes as high as 24. But at the end of the day, people just see that small number of numbers out of infinity. And because they are unique in that way, then they mean something. And this is absolutely valid because there's such a small number of them. And so when they appear in a context, you say, aha, I see the hand of bacon here. And that's why they have a significance, is because there aren't a lot of these numbers. However, with my work, what I've done is I've discovered that there are other values, additional values, that do indeed communicate meaning. So that's when I go to the next slide here, and you see that I've expanded the table. Suddenly it becomes a whole lot easier to say, oh, look, here's more evidence. It doesn't work that way, as you're going to see. What I like to point out to people is that these numbers that we have here in this table, this is the small traditional table that you would normally see. A lot of these numbers actually reveal Bacon's true identity as the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II. One of the phonetic messages I discovered in the ciphertexts of the plaque in one of the transposition ciphers states phonetically, as you can see here, I art F, I, F the third. And so when we add up F the third in simple cipher, the total is 33, which, as you see over here on the table, is Bacon. In reverse cipher, it totals 67, which is his name, Francis, in simple cipher. And the case cipher actually produces a value of 137, which is the 33rd prime number, again, indicating the name Bacon in simple cipher. So it's really kind of cool that the numbers that people accept also contain within them his secret identity, his true identity. King Francis Stuart is exactly the same as Frau Rosi Crosse, as you can see here in the table, 157, 168, and 287. And so that's really the hidden meaning of these numbers. Now, using them as signposts, that's great, but that's not all that meets the eye here. So what you have here in this plaque, and many of you who have been following the show know, I always refer back to this. This is where I first started my decryptions, which was this plaque, which contained a transposition cipher. I refer to this as the Rosetta Stone of the Fraternity of Rosi Crosse. This plaque, in all of its variations of transpositions that you can create out of it, contains the hidden autobiography of Francis Bacon. Or maybe I'll rebrand my first book as the hidden autobiography of William Shakespeare. I'm sure I'll sell more copies that way. But so because it contained a transposition cipher, it had all of these different messages in it. And obviously, primarily above that was the message of his parentage as the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II. Now, a lot of people have had a difficulty accepting this because they so strongly want to believe that he was the son of Queen Elizabeth I, when in fact that's just not true. So, as the caveat I always give, if this is your first time watching this video, most of the people watching live have heard all this information before, but if you're watching the recording on YouTube and it's your first time hearing about it, please do not contact me and tell me all the reasons why this can't be true, because I've dealt with this idea in all of my work, and the evidence is overwhelming at this point. So the other message that appeared were many of Francis Bacon's aliases, and found that to be very interesting. Primarily among them, obviously, Tiberio Tonelli, which was a famous Renaissance artist, as well as again, don't contact me about this either, but Samuel de Champlain. So this plaque is what really unlocked the cipher system for me. And as I did this, I repeat this constantly on the air. And Adam, if you can throw a comment in there too of how you found this to be true as well. Francis Bacon taught me how to do this. As I looked and followed his clues where they led me, he taught me systematically how to do his decryptions. All I did was I used his inductive reasoning and his cipher systems. And this is what revealed all of this information. The other thing, too, is most people, if you look at this table Although that if you go online and you look for the cipher signatures of Francis Bacon, you're going to see that very small table that I just showed you here in a previous slide. One of the things that this information taught me was the importance of Elizabethan short cipher and what its function is. And so when we consider that Francis was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Francis II, there are a whole new series of values or versions of his name that we can start to calculate. And that's what I did. And so a lot of these hidden signature values that appeared, and they started appearing regularly in the ciphertext, were this additional table here, where suddenly, instead of just Francis, we have Francois, the French version of his name, and all its associated values in simple, reverse, K, and short cipher I included here on this table, as well as Mary's last name, Stuart. If we put Francois Stuart together, we have 175 and 175 in both simple and reverse. This is one of the only names where I've ever seen this happen. The K cipher value of Francois Stuart is 305, which is the exact number of characters appearing on that plaque of Shakespeare's funerary monument. So he encoded his secret name, his true name, within just the number of characters. Now I'm saying characters, not letters. Some of the letters are conjoined into one character for the purposes of the transposition cipher. And please note that the Elizabethan short cipher value of Francois Stuart is actually 67. Francis in simple cipher. Included here is the information about Walter Raleigh, where all of his values in simple, reverse, K, and short. And please note the spelling of Raleigh. This is the spelling he used when he signed his name, not the modern version that has an I in it as Raleigh. There was no I in the way he spelled it. So, and here you see the associated values here. You know, the very important number 123 for Walter Raleigh in simple cipher. The number 51 in short cipher is his one of his signatures that was used frequently, that is associated with Francis Bacon's short cipher signature of 55. And also, of course, Stuart King. These values are highly significant and appear everywhere, along with the values of the word twin, for reasons which many of you who have been watching the show understand why. So as these numbers were appearing, suddenly I started to learn their meaning within the context of the messages. When Francis Bacon refers to Walter Raleigh as his twin, for example. So I started counting these numbers, and all of a sudden I realized, oh, that's why the number 62 keeps coming up. So, and they kept coming up in what I called the checking system. The way a transposition cipher works, when you identify the acrostic anagrams, after you rearrange all of the characters, and you look at the table, and you start identifying the acrostic anagrams, you don't use every single letter every time. Sometimes there are letters that are just unused and left over. What you then do is you take those letters and you calculate their values in each of the cipher systems. And invariably, when I was learning about Francis Bacon's father was Francois II, suddenly in that message you see the leftover letters total 81. And I thought, well, that's not one of our values, until I calculated the value of Francois, and sure enough, it's the simple cipher value of Francois. And so this is the way he kind of brought me along. And so what this did was added these values to what I call our known signatures that go above and beyond the 67, 33, 100, and so on. So what happened was, as other unknown values started to appear, I would go back and look at the context. And within the context, suddenly there would be information over here, and I would say, well, maybe if I use this version of Walter's name, and sure enough, everything clicked. So you have to use the context when you're encountering these new values, particularly the ones that appear in the section of my book called Bacon's Codebook. I'm going to talk about, the purpose that very lengthy list actually serves in my book. And so, as I said, Francois, 81, 119, 185 in simple, reverse, and K, respectively. And as I just said, these values kept appearing in the checking system the deeper I got into the decryption. So I had to calculate new values according to the new information based upon the context. And so that's how this is really supposed to work. Now, here is the true key as I just mentioned it, to Bacon's Codebook, and that is context. If you see a number 33 randomly somewhere, it means nothing. If it's appearing in a symbolic way in a facsimile of the first folio, you probably have something. It's a signpost, and you need to keep digging. So the context, it has to appear in the Rosi Crosse materials, and this is anything that was put out by Francis Bacon, Walter Raleigh, or even Sir Francis Drake, as I believe these three were the initial 3 original members who created what they jokingly called the fraternity of the Rosi Crosse. Any of their known aliases, any of those materials, if these signposts appear there, then you have something as well. That's another part of the context. So we also have to look at when you see known and accepted cipher signatures from that first very short original list. That's when you have the proper context, that those numbers are appearing in the RC materials, and then you have a new number that you're confused by. You need to dig into it to see if it actually would contain some sort of information regarding the context. And again, these numbers have to repeat. In the scientific method, you have to have repeatability. And we've those of us who have been delving into this for a while, Jason, Andrew, Will, and John, you guys, and Stephanie, you all have seen this. Z, you talk about repeatability all the time. So if that's there, you have something. Then what we do is if you have correlating values in every cipher system, that's when you have a lock. That's when you've discovered a piece of the truth. For example, here on the right, we have a picture or an excerpt from a portrait of Sir Walter Raleigh. And in that portrait is the motto, Amor et Virtute, which means love and virtue, or with love and virtue. And when you calculate the values of these words, this phrase, this motto, in simple, reverse, K, and short ciphers, these are the numbers you get. Now, when I did this, I got excited because 177 I knew was a Walter Raleigh value. It's a reverse cipher value of the name Walter Raleigh. And here it is on his portrait. We have a good context there. So we have a meaning. The second and third numbers in reverse and K, I'd never seen before. And lastly, 51, I just mentioned it in the previous slide. It's the short cipher value of, again, Walter Raleigh. So I thought, okay, we have kind of bookends here. We have a context. We have something. There's something significant. I wonder what these other values are. And then what I did was I tried something with Walter Raleigh's name that I had done with my Francis Bacon research, which was I considered, well, if Walter is his twin, then his last name is also, Valois Angoulême or Stuart, if he's just using his mother's name. And if he were king, he would be the first of that name. So sure enough, I calculated the value of Walter Stuart I, and the numbers are exact. 177, 148, 281, 51, in simple reverse, K, and short ciphers. All 3 cipher systems. So obviously my curiosity got the better of me, and there's one more cipher system that they used called fourfold cipher. It's far lesser known, but the value in fourfold cipher was 217 for both Amor et Virtute as well as Walter Stuart I. All 5 cipher systems locked. So this is what I mean by correlating values. This is not coincidence. It's impossible for this to be a coincidence. And so this is the way Bacon's Codebook actually works. You have to have these correlations, and it has to repeat. So that total list that I just showed you in my book, in the Keys of the Rosi Crosse, I have to give this huge caveat to this. This is not intended to be used as a direct code book like Francis Walsingham's was. This is the point of the show tonight. Anyone who buys the book, please don't just go through and look at that list and say, oh, well, this number automatically means this. That's not true at all. You have to have the context of the main cipher signatures. For example, in that portrait, 177 is Walter Raleigh in reverse cipher, and it's on his painting. Okay, so we have something here. 51, again, short cipher. So you have to keep digging. And when you have that kind of context, that's when you know you have something. You can't just look at the number and say, oh, well, this means this, out of context. I put it in the book for the convenience of the reader, as well as for their edification in terms of, this is why, protecting yourself from saturation is important in confirmation bias. So it's for the convenience. If all of a sudden you see a number, you can actually go in order of the number, numerical order, and skim down and identify the number and see what it might possibly mean when you're reading the book. So that's why the numbers are put in the order from lowest to highest. You can easily identify them. But as I said, not every number that appears on this list even appears in the book. I was putting in there for illustrative purposes of how, given a context, an unknown number could possibly actually convey a specific meaning. So the caveat here is don't misuse it. Don't allow it to appeal to your confirmation bias, because that is where you're falling victim to the idea of number saturation, and you have to avoid that at all costs. So it also demonstrates the importance of avoiding that. You have to have that context. You have to have corroboration. You have to have repeatability. All of those things that are really the key to Bacon's Codebook. So coming to my next episode here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be having my friend Adam Thomas here on September 22nd, episode 76. He's made some transposition cipher discoveries in the works of Shakespeare and other sources. He's going to come on and explain. And here in this picture, you see him holding his facsimile, the first folio, and an insert of his dad, who is also helping him identify the acrostic anagrams in those transposition ciphers. And the two of them have been having a ball working together on this. They've really taken my work and really moved the ball farther down the field in a way that I think is really going to melt some faces, explode some minds, and drop some jaws. He certainly did mine when the last time I spoke with him. And Adam, you are here in the chat tonight. So I wanted to give you a shout out here in a couple of weeks, guys. This next episode I'm looking forward to this as much as I've ever looked forward to one of my episodes. And it's like, I've had some real, jaw-dropping moments on the show, whether it's with Will and John or with Jason, Z, when we did that, our big, kind of get together powwow. There were so many things that were flying around. It was just, my head was spinning. Well, we're going to stay tuned here in a couple of weeks, because Andrew, I know you're going to do the same for me. Jason, thanks so much. Here we go. Yeah. And yeah, Ray also said the same thing, 305. And again, that number is, as I said, significant. He was signing, the plaque with the number of characters on it. It was really pretty cool. Let's see a question. If Francis and Walter were twins, which one would have come to the throne? Do we know who was born first? Did Walter have children? Can we find descendants with the DNA of the royal family? Yes. Francis was first. In the ciphertext, Francis constantly refers to himself as the oldest or eldest, and he jokes with Walter, calling him the second egg or the second ova. So Bacon obviously knew, what caused people to have twins, and he understood the reproductive system as a scientist. So Francis was oldest. However, in my first book, there's this very clear message where he states that he was the heir to two thrones. He says, "I pass on holiday." And he also said he didn't want to be what he called a fancy dressed helmsman. And so he didn't want the job, and he wanted to see Walter become king. I think that was the deal he had worked out with Queen Elizabeth I, the secret deal that no one could ever figure out. He was trying to get a job through his uncle and so on. I think he was negotiating to have the throne go to Walter. And I think later on the Queen's son, Robert Devereux, second Earl of Essex, found out about it, and that's what caused his rebellion. So going back. Hey, Aki, good to see you. Glad you make it. Funny how you say that, AO. I'm going to talk about not leaving a stone unturned. The details, yes, 100%. Tom, that's great to hear. Tom says 2 years ago, I had no idea what this said. Now I can read it like a page in Jake's book. Well, as long as that page is clear, my friend. Thank you for that. Yeah, Tommy with a good comment. I would hide if my mom was put in the Tower of Elizabeth for 15 years, then beheaded. Scary. Yeah, you know, the thing is that these guys, it was Elizabeth that hid them with the Bacons for safekeeping, obviously, and leverage until they got older and, you know, she grew to love them. And that's when Mary decided to have another child, James I. And she continued to try to produce heirs. Oh, thanks for that, Adam. I had talked about how he teaches us how to do this. And here's Adam's experience as well. He trains you to follow specific pathways and 100% teaches you the skills to find his hidden messages as you go. That's exactly it, Tom. And every time you and I talk about that, you know, we're dumbfounded, you know, that he was able to set it up that way. Oh, and as a follow-up, Jan, the DNA of the royal family, I believe that that's why this information has been suppressed right to this day. Frankly, it still could upset succession. It would make things, well, uncomfortable for the current royal family. So, yeah. You know what, Linda? That's exactly it. It blows my mind that you can make a slogan or this motto with the same value as a name. Seems like it would be so hard to do to find something that works and makes any sense at all. And that was Bacon's genius. You know, he's the greatest mind of the last 500 years, in my opinion. And the thing is, I'm sure he, when Bacon would do this, he would look at a word and he would already know the value of it in the cipher systems. And so he would put them together in sort of this jigsaw pattern where all of a sudden, until he got the values he wanted. And that's why suddenly, you know, Amor et Virtue becomes, you know, Raleigh's motto. It just made it up because it fit. You would need to keep developing ciphers as the ones they made get cracked, just like in cybersecurity. Where did that come from again? Francis Bacon. 100%. Thanks for that, Amy. Yeah. And again, because he was using these multiple forms of this bijective function is what it's called, this alphanumeric relationship amongst all of these different kinds of ciphers, because they were all interacting in this way, you know, people would know, you know, they might be able to uncover one layer, say simple cipher, and see the hint of something going on, but not understand the rest. And so that's why it's so intricate, and that's why it worked for so long. And the interesting thing too is his biliteral cipher was just incredibly genius. Oh, thanks for that, Tom. Yeah. Well, that without context, you have absolutely nothing, right? It's all nothing but confirmation bias. Yeah, Aki. Gematria is much a part of the languages of antiquity, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin as the letters themselves. Language within the language, Bacon ensured English would as well. That's 100% correct, and this is where he learned it. With his education, being fluent in nearly every language. He would have made sure of that, and he made great use of particularly Hebrew. With the atbash system that they used of substituting. Um, you know. Uh, the same letters in the alphabet, with a substitution system. It gave him a great deal of flexibility. Great comments, gang. Great thoughts. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Well, listen, gang, I wanted to remind you this guy going to be here in 2 weeks. And Adam and I have gotten together, let's see, how many times? Wait. Talked on the phone, Adam, gosh, 3 or 4 times, gotten together online a handful of times, and every time you show me something, you just blow my mind. And it's funny because Jason and Will and John, they all love to come on the podcast and just watch my face, and they always hold back a few pieces when they drop a certain bomb, and they love to see the dumbfounded look on my face. So be prepared here in a few weeks, everyone, when Adam does exactly that. So, all right, gang. Like I said, lately I've been trying to keep these in under, about under an hour, and I think that's been working better for people's attention spans, and giving people smaller bits and pieces, in smaller bites of my information instead of doing, the 2-hour deep dive that tends to glaze over eyes. So. That's it. Again, if you like this information, make sure you hit the like button. Come to and join our Facebook group, The Ghosts of Bacon. I have a new business page for my latest book, The Keys of the Rosi Crosse. Make sure you head over there and follow me there, because as soon as Facebook, allows me to start streaming, that's going to be my new location, since my original Facebook account was hacked, and I was never able to recover it. So I'm still working to build everything back up that we had before. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you in a few weeks. And there's a possibility there might be some adventures here between this show and the next. And if that's the case, I'll give you updates at that time. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, be good. Bye.